The backfire echoed across the cobblestone driveway like a gunshot, and Marcus Hayes felt every eye in Greenwich turn toward his rusted Ford F-150. The engine coughed twice more before settling into an apologetic rumble,
I'm so glad
black exhaust curling past the parade of German sedans and Italian sports cars that lined the circular drive like monuments to wealth he could buy 100 times over, but never would. His daughter's voice cut through the silence, small and careful in the way children speak when they already know the answer will hurt. "Daddy, why does Grandma Catherine always look at you like you're dirty?" Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel, oil stains dark against his calloused palms. 8 years old, and Lily had already learned to read the language of contempt. He wanted to lie, to tell her she was imagining things, but he'd promised Elena he would never teach their daughter that her reality was wrong. Some people measure worth by what's in your wallet, sweetheart, not what's in your heart. The Whitmore estate sprawled across 3 acres of manicured perfection, the kind of landscape that required a staff of 6 to maintain. Through the truck's cracked windshield, Marcus watched the afternoon sun paint the limestone facade gold, highlighting every column and cornice that screamed old money, inherited privilege, the kind of wealth that looked down on anyone who'd built something from nothing. Lily pressed her nose against the window, breath fogging the glass. "This house has more windows than our whole apartment building." Marcus reached over, smoothing down a flyaway strand of honey-colored hair, the same shade Elena once had. The pale blue cotton dress Lily wore was 3 years old now, hem riding above her knees, tiny embroidered flowers along the edge fading from too many washes. Elena had picked it out during one of her good weeks, when the cancer had retreated enough to let them pretend normal was still possible. Lily had insisted on wearing it today. Marcus hadn't had the heart to argue. He stepped out onto the gravel, boots crunching, polished that morning until they almost passed for presentable, and walked around to open Lily's door. She waited for him to lift her down, her small hands settling on his shoulders with the trust that had defined their relationship since the day Elena's breathing had finally stopped. Every decision Marcus made, every choice, every calculated risk, it all came back to this: keeping that trust intact. The front door opened before they reached the steps. Richard Whitmore materialized in the entrance, tall and silver-haired, his navy blazer worth more than Marcus's truck payment, maybe 2. The smile he offered carried all the warmth of a quarterly earnings report. "Marcus, still driving that vehicle?" Not a question, an observation, a judgment delivered with the precision of a man who'd spent 40 years in investment banking, learning how to make people feel small without raising his voice. Lily's grip on Marcus's hand tightened. He squeezed back, their private signal that they were in this together, that whatever came next, they would face as a team. They'd been a team since she was 2 years old, since the hospital room, since the moment he'd understood that being both mother and father meant never letting her see him break. Richard bent down to Lily's level, and something almost human flickered across his face. "You look more like your mother every day, sweetheart." The compliment landed like a stone, heavy with all the things Richard couldn't say, that Elena had wasted her potential, that she'd chosen poverty over privilege, that her love for a maintenance worker had been the greatest disappointment of their lives. Lily smiled shyly, pressing closer to Marcus's leg. He placed his hand on her shoulder, feeling the delicate bones beneath his palm, and forced words past the tightness in his throat. "Thank you for inviting us, Richard. Lily's been looking forward to seeing everyone." The lie tasted bitter. Lily had asked 3 times if they really had to go, if maybe they could just have pizza at home instead, just the 2 of them like most Saturdays. But Marcus had said yes. They had to go, because Lily deserved to know her mother's family, even if that family had spent 6 years making it clear Marcus wasn't worthy of breathing the same air. The foyer swallowed them whole. Crystal chandelier the size of Marcus's kitchen table, marble floors polished to mirrors, fresh flower arrangements that probably cost what he spent on groceries in a week. The air smelled of furniture polish and generational wealth. That particular scent Marcus had never grown accustomed to during his years with Elena. She'd loved him despite this world, not because of it, and he'd loved her the same way, choosing a life far simpler than what she'd been raised to expect. $3.8 billion in various accounts, investments, and holdings. A G650 registered under Hall Tech Solutions sitting in a private hangar at Teterboro. Real estate in Dallas, Seattle, and Austin. And here he stood in work boots and a flannel shirt, letting these people think he was exactly what they saw. A poor man who'd gotten lucky once and lost it when Elena died. Voices spilled from the dining room, laughter that had the practiced quality of people who'd learned social performance instead of genuine joy. Marcus recognized the sound. He built his first million listening to corporate executives make that exact noise in conference rooms, pretending connection while calculating advantage. Judith Whitmore sat at the head of the table like monarchy made flesh, silver hair sculpted into submission, Chanel suit without a single wrinkle. Beside her, Diana, Veronica's younger sister, occupied the power seat, engagement ring catching light every time she gestured, which was constantly. The man next to her had Harvard written all over him, from the way he held his wine glass to the practiced ease of his posture. Preston Calloway. No, Garrett. Garrett Caldwell. Marcus had read the briefing his assistant prepared on everyone who'd be here tonight. Old shipping money, Harvard Business School, the kind of pedigree that made the Whitmores practically giddy with approval. Judith's eyes found Marcus the moment he entered, and her expression shifted with the subtlety of a corporate board dismissing a failed proposal. "Cole, Marcus, how lovely that you could join us." She'd almost said Cole. Marcus caught it, filed it away. Elena had mentioned once that her mother could never keep her boyfriend's names straight, that to Judith they were all interchangeable, all equally disappointing. "And Rosie, Lily, darling, come give your grandmother a kiss." 2 mistakes in 10 seconds. Marcus felt his daughter hesitate, felt her confusion through the connection of their clasped hands. Lily dutifully crossed the room, pressed her lips to Judith's powdered cheek, received a pat on the head that seemed more reflexive than affectionate. Judith's eyes remained on Marcus. "Still driving that old pickup, I see. You know, Elena would have wanted better for Lily." The words hit like they always did, designed to wound, to remind him that he would never be enough, that his worth would always be measured against what he couldn't provide. Marcus felt the familiar rise of defensive anger, the instinct to lash out, to tell this woman exactly what Elena had actually wanted, what she'd said during those final weeks when morphine made her honest and pain stripped away pretense. But he swallowed it down, guided Lily to the 2 empty seats at the far end of the table, the placement itself a silent declaration of their position in the family hierarchy. Dead last. Barely tolerated. Around them, silk dresses and designer watches gleamed under chandelier light. Uncle Stuart, Richard's brother, regarded Marcus with the pitying concern of someone watching a wounded animal. Aunt Vivian whispered something to the cousin beside her, eyes flicking toward Marcus's flannel shirt. The message was clear. They all knew he was struggling, barely making ends meet, raising Lily in circumstances that bordered on neglect. If only they knew. If only they understood that the company their precious Garrett's firm had tried and failed to get a meeting with, belonged to the man they were currently treating like charity case. Diana leaned across the table, diamond flashing like a distress signal. "Marcus, you remember Garrett, don't you? My fiancé." The word dripped with ownership, with the smug satisfaction of someone who'd finally caught a prize worth displaying. Garrett extended his hand, grip firm, held just a moment too long, establishing dominance. Marcus had seen the move 1,000 times in boardrooms. Marcus Hayes. The name sounds familiar for some reason. Garrett's brow furrowed slightly, genuine confusion mixing with the reflexive condescension of a man who couldn't imagine why a maintenance worker's name would ring any bells. "Have we met before?" Marcus shook his head, withdrawing his hand. "I don't think so. I don't travel in the same circles." The honesty landed flat. Diana laughed as if he'd made a self-deprecating joke, as if the very idea of Marcus traveling in any kind of circles was comedy gold. "No, I suppose you don't. Garrett moves in rather elevated circles. His family's shipping company has contracts with half the Fortune 500. She squeezed Garrett's arm possessively, and Marcus saw the calculation behind her eyes. She'd won. She'd landed the right kind of man, the kind their parents approved of, the kind who would never show up to family dinner in work boots and a truck that backfired. The conversation flowed around Marcus like water around stone, touching him briefly before moving on to more interesting subjects. Richard discussed his golf handicap with the casual authority of someone who'd never had to worry about the cost of club membership. Judith detailed her plans for redecorating the summer house in Martha's Vineyard, debating fabric swatches and designer names. Various relatives weighed in on private schools in Manhattan, comparing curricula and connections with the seriousness of military strategists. Lily ate her soup quietly beside him, feet dangling above the floor, not quite reaching the ground. Every so often she glanced up at Marcus with questioning eyes, and he offered a small smile of reassurance. 6 years of this. 6 years of watching his daughter absorb the message that she wasn't quite good enough, that her father's poverty was a character flaw, that love without money was somehow less valid. But not much longer. Marcus had made his decision 3 months ago, when Richard had called suggesting, not asking, suggesting, that perhaps Lily would benefit from a more stable environment. Perhaps the Whitmores should explore legal guardianship options, just to ensure the child's well-being. That's when Marcus had understood. They weren't going to stop. They were going to keep pushing, keep undermining, keep trying to take the one thing in his life that mattered. So tonight would be the night. Let them reveal themselves completely. Let them show Lily exactly who they were when they thought Marcus had nothing. And then... "Cole, Marcus, I've been meaning to ask." Judith's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a blade. The table fell quiet, attention shifting to Marcus like spotlights finding their target. "How's the job situation? Still doing that delivery work?" The question hung in the air, designed for maximum humiliation. Everyone waited, forks paused, wine glasses suspended, watching to see how the poor relation would squirm. Marcus took a slow sip of water before responding. "I've moved on from delivery work. Actually, started my own business a few years back." His voice stayed calm, matter-of-fact, offering nothing beyond the basic information requested. No elaboration, no defense, just simple statement of fact. Judith raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident in every line of her face. "Your own business? How enterprising. What sort of business, if you don't mind my asking?" The emphasis on business made it sound like a child's lemonade stand, a cute attempt at entrepreneurship that would inevitably fail. Around the table, smiles hid poorly behind napkins and wine glasses. They were enjoying this, Marcus realized. This was entertainment for them, watching the maintenance man pretend he'd made something of himself. Logistics, software for managing freight and shipping routes. Started small, but it's grown over the years. He could have said more, could have told them about the 18-hour days spent coding while Lily slept, about the apartment where he'd built his empire one algorithm at a time, about the moment his first Fortune 500 client signed on and he'd understood that he might actually pull this off. Could have described the feeling of turning down a $2 billion acquisition offer because he refused to give up control of something he'd built from nothing. But these people didn't deserve those stories. Those memories belonged to him and Lily. Sacred history that money couldn't buy and status couldn't touch. Diana exchanged a glance with Garrett, lips curving in amusement. Logistics software. That sounds very technical. I didn't realize you were the computer type, Marcus. Her tone made it clear she thought nothing of the sort. In her mind, a man who drove a pickup truck and wore flannel shirts couldn't possibly understand something as sophisticated as technology. The cognitive dissonance was almost funny. Almost. Marcus shrugged. I learned what I needed to learn. You do what you have to do when you have a daughter depending on you. The conversation might have ended there, might have dissolved back into discussions of country clubs and vacation homes. But Garrett Caldwell, eager to impress his future in-laws, chose that moment to demonstrate his business acumen. He leaned back in his chair, swirling wine with practiced nonchalance. Speaking of logistics, you wouldn't believe the fascinating case study we reviewed at the firm last month. A company called Hall Tech Solutions, started by some guy in his apartment, now operating in 12 countries with their own fleet of aircraft. Marcus felt Lily's hand tighten under the table. He gave her fingers a gentle squeeze, their signal that everything was okay, that whatever came next, they would handle together. Garrett continued, oblivious to the shift in energy. The founder turned down a $2 billion acquisition offer last year because he wanted to maintain control. My senior partners were practically salivating over the growth metrics. They tried to get a meeting, couldn't even get past his assistant. Guy's a ghost, never does press, no photos, nothing. Around them, the Whitmores continued their conversations, paying no attention to Garrett's business talk. But Garrett himself had gone still, wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time that evening. We're flying to Nantucket this weekend on the family jet. You know, the Gulfstream G450. Saw another one at Teterboro last week, a G650. Absolutely gorgeous. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. My partner sent me these. Look at this beauty. The screen showed a sleek white aircraft, tail number clearly visible, N827HTS. Hall Tech Solutions. Ever heard of them? Garrett's brain was working now. Marcus could see it happening. The pieces clicking together, the impossible connection forming. They're revolutionizing freight logistics. The founder's net worth is estimated at nearly $4 billion. And he's sitting somewhere in the world right now, probably in jeans and a t-shirt, while we're all here talking about... Garrett stopped mid-sentence, stared at Marcus, really stared. Hayes. Marcus Hayes. The whisper cut through the dinner chatter like a knife. Suddenly, everyone was paying attention, forks lowering, conversations dying, all eyes turning toward the head of the table where Garrett sat with his phone in his hand and shock written across his face. Holy shit. Diana's hand flew to Garrett's arm. What are you talking about? Garrett didn't answer her. His fingers flew across his phone screen, pulling up articles, scrolling through search results, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been awe. You're C. Nathan Hayes? The full name hung in the air like a detonation. Marcus felt the moment crystallize, felt the future split into before and after, felt his daughter's small hand trembling in his own. Diana snatched the phone from Garrett, eyes scanning the screen, her face drained of color. This is ridiculous. Marcus is a maintenance worker. But her voice lacked conviction. Garrett was already pulling up another tab, another article, evidence piling up like an indictment. No, he's not. The jet I saw? It's registered to Hall Tech Solutions, the same company that just signed a contract with the Department of Defense, the same company that Forbes profiled last month as one of the fastest-growing private enterprises in North America. He looked up from the phone, meeting Marcus's eyes. The founder's name is listed as C. Nathan Hayes, net worth estimated at $3.8 billion. Headquarters in Dallas, satellite offices in 12 countries, private fleet of aircraft for executive transport and freight operations. Richard's business instincts kicked in, cutting through the shock. How long? His voice was sharp, demanding. Marcus could practically see the man's mind working, calculating what this meant, what opportunities had been missed, what connections could have been leveraged. How long what? Marcus kept his voice neutral, giving them nothing. How long have you been lying to us? The accusation landed hard. Lily flinched beside him, and Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Lying. As if omission was the same as deceit, as if he owed these people anything beyond basic civility. I never lied. You never asked. You assumed. The simplicity of the statement seemed to hit harder than any elaborate defense would have. Judith's hand trembled as she set down her wineglass. Diana's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. Uncle Stuart leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Aunt Vivian grabbed her husband's arm. The cousins who'd been ignoring Lily all evening suddenly couldn't look away. Lily tugged at Marcus's sleeve, voice small and confused. Daddy, what are they saying? Marcus knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level, shutting out everyone else in the room. In that moment, there was only his daughter. Only the truth he'd kept from her for her own good. Only the promise he'd made to Elena that Lily would grow up knowing the value of work before she understood the power of money. It's okay, sweetheart. I'll explain everything later. Lily's eyes were wide, processing, trying to understand why everyone was staring, why Grandma Judith looked like she'd seen a ghost, why the room felt like something had exploded even though nothing had made a sound. Did we win the lottery? The innocence of the question, the pure child logic of it, made Marcus smile despite everything. Something like that, baby. He stood, turning back to face the table. Judith had recovered enough to speak, though her voice carried a tremor that betrayed the calculation happening behind her eyes. Well, this changes things. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Does it? Of course. We had no idea you were so successful. This is wonderful news. The pivot was breathtaking in its speed. Wonderful news. As if the past 6 years of judgment and criticism had never happened. As if she hadn't spent an hour ago trying to convince him that Lily would be better off in boarding school, away from his inadequate parenting. Diana's voice joined her mother's, higher pitched now, almost frantic. Marcus, why didn't you tell us? We could have helped you network, introduced you to... I didn't want your help. The words came out flat, final. Marcus felt the weight of 6 years behind them. Every snide comment, every pitying look, every suggestion that he wasn't capable of caring for his own daughter. Richard stood, businessman to the core, already formulating his approach. Perhaps we got off on the wrong foot this evening. Why don't you and Lily stay for dessert? I'd love to hear more about your company. I have some contacts in the shipping industry who might be interested in your services. The transparent pivot was almost insulting. Contacts, services. As if Richard Whitmore's Rolodex was something Marcus needed. As if the man who just spent an hour implying Marcus was an unfit parent now wanted to play mentor and advisor. Marcus lifted Lily from her chair, settling her against his hip the way he had since she was a baby. She was getting too big for this, really, but tonight she seemed to need the comfort of being held, and he needed the comfort of holding her. Thank you, Richard, but I think it's time for us to go. We have a long drive back, and Lily has school in the morning. But surely you could stay a little longer. Judith's voice had taken on a pleading quality Marcus had never heard before. She rose from her seat, one hand reaching out as if to physically stop him from leaving. We so rarely get to see Lily. Perhaps we could arrange more regular visits. I could even come to your home, wherever that is. I realize I've never actually seen where you live. The admission hung in the air, damning in its honesty. 6 years, and Judith Whitmore had never once asked where her granddaughter slept at night, never once expressed interest in seeing the life Elena's daughter was living. Until now. Until the Forbes article. Until $3.8 billion made everything different. Marcus paused at the dining room doorway, Lily's weight warm and solid against his chest. He turned back to face the woman who'd spent years making him feel inadequate, who'd questioned his ability to raise his own daughter, who'd offered nothing but criticism and condescension when he'd needed support and understanding. Our home is wherever we make it, Judith. It was a studio apartment for a while, then a one-bedroom. Now it's a house with a yard where Lily can play. The address never mattered to us. He shifted Lily slightly, feeling her head settle against his shoulder. And those regular visits would have been nice about 5 years ago when Lily was asking why her grandmother never came to see her. But we've built our own life now. We have our own family, the one we chose. His voice stayed level, calm, but the words landed like hammer blows. I'm not sure there's room for people who only show up when they find out we're worth something. Judith's face crumpled. Diana made a sound that might have been a protest. Richard's jaw worked, business acumen warring with paternal instinct. Uncle Stuart looked away. Aunt Vivian dabbed at her eyes with a napkin worth more than most people's weekly grocery budget. Marcus turned and walked down the marble hallway, past the crystal chandelier, through the grand foyer where fresh flowers wilted in their expensive arrangements. Behind him, the silence was absolute. No one called after him. No one tried to stop him. They were still processing, still trying to reconcile the man they'd dismissed with the man he actually was. The evening air hit his face, cool and clean after the oppressive atmosphere inside. His pickup truck sat exactly where he'd left it, looking even more out of place now that everyone inside knew what its driver was worth. He could buy a fleet of those Mercedes and BMWs without noticing the expense, could purchase this entire estate and still have enough left over to buy another one. But none of that had ever been the point. Marcus buckled Lily into her booster seat, taking a moment to smooth down her hair and kiss her forehead. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion and the weight of information too complex for an 8-year-old to fully process. Daddy, are you sad that they were mean to us? He considered the question seriously, as he always did with Lily's questions. She deserved honest answers, even when the truth was complicated. I think I'm a little sad, but not because of the mean things they said. He adjusted her seatbelt, making sure it sat properly across her chest. I'm sad because your mother loved those people, and she would have wanted them to be part of your life. I'm sad that they couldn't see what was really important. Willie's voice was growing drowsy, words slurring together. What's really important? Marcus climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, let it cough and rumble to life in its familiar, comforting way. Love, family, the people who show up for you when things are hard, not just when things are good. The people who see who you really are, not what you have or what you can give them. He pulled out of the driveway, watching the Whitmore mansion shrink in his rearview mirror. 3 acres of manicured perfection, limestone facade gleaming in the moonlight, every window lit like a stage set. That's what's really important, sweetheart. Everything else is just noise. The drive home was quiet except for the engine and Lily's soft breathing as she drifted in and out of sleep. Marcus let his mind wander over the evening, cataloging moments and reactions, storing away expressions and words for later examination. He felt no satisfaction in their shock, no triumph in their embarrassment. He'd never wanted to prove anything to the Whitmores. He'd simply wanted them to love his daughter. But acceptance had never been offered, not in any genuine way. They'd tolerated him for Elena's sake while she was alive, and barely that after she was gone. They'd questioned his parenting, criticized his choices, suggested more than once that Lily might be better off in their care. They'd never seen the sacrifice behind his decisions, the love that drove every choice he made. They'd only seen a man in a flannel shirt driving an old truck, and they'd judged him accordingly. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that he could have changed their perception at any time. A mention of the company, a casual reference to his net worth, and their attitudes would have shifted overnight. He would have been welcomed into the family, invited to all the right parties, consulted on financial matters. His opinion would have suddenly mattered. His choices would have suddenly made sense. But that was exactly why he'd never said anything, because he'd wanted to know the truth about these people, the real truth that money couldn't hide or buy. He'd wanted to see how they treated a man they thought was beneath them, how they spoke about poverty in front of his daughter, how they measured worth based on bank accounts rather than character. And now he knew. The phone in his pocket buzzed insistently, vibration after vibration, as messages and voicemails piled up. He ignored them all. Whatever the Whitmores had to say now, whatever apologies or explanations or offers they wanted to make, it could wait. Tonight was for him and Lily, for processing what had happened, for reinforcing the lessons that mattered. They pulled into their neighborhood 40 minutes later, modest 2-story colonials on quiet streets where lawns were maintained by homeowners themselves. Marcus had chosen this area specifically for its normalcy, its distance from the world of excess the Whitmores inhabited. Here, Lily could ride her bike without security guards. Here, neighbors borrowed sugar and traded babysitting. Here, life had the texture of reality instead of the artificial polish of wealth. The house was dark when they arrived. Marcus carried Lily inside, careful not to wake her as he navigated the familiar hallway. Her room welcomed them with the soft glow of a nightlight shaped like a crescent moon, the one she'd picked out when she was 4. He laid her gently on the bed, removed her shoes, pulled the covers up to her chin. She stirred briefly, eyes fluttering open. "Daddy." Her voice was thick with sleep, words barely coherent. "I'm glad you're my dad." Marcus's throat tightened with emotion he couldn't quite name. He leaned down, pressed a kiss to her forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of her shampoo. "I'm glad you're my daughter, sweetheart. The greatest thing I've ever been glad about." He stroked her hair until her breathing deepened, until she slipped fully into sleep, until he was certain that whatever confusion or hurt the evening had caused was temporarily at peace. The truck sat silent in the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled. Marcus remained behind the wheel for another moment, watching moonlight paint silver across the steering wheel Elena had gripped during her last good months, when she'd insisted on coming along for grocery runs, even though the pain medication made her dizzy. The leather was worn smooth where her fingers had rested, and sometimes Marcus could still feel her presence in the passenger seat, could still hear her voice reminding him that kindness was stronger than pride. Tonight felt like a betrayal of that kindness. He pulled out his phone. 47 missed calls, 23 voicemails. The screen lit up again as another call came through. Judith Whitmore, third time in 10 minutes. Marcus declined it, watching the notification disappear into the void with all the others. The first voicemail was time-stamped 11:47 p.m., barely an hour after he'd walked out. Judith's voice came through tight and controlled, the tremor underneath suggesting she'd rehearsed before calling. "Marcus, we need to talk. I may have been hasty. Please call me back." He deleted it, moved to the next. Catherine Whitmore at midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2. By the fifth message, her composure had cracked. "Please, Lily is my granddaughter, my only connection to Elena. Don't take her away from us." Marcus's finger hovered over the delete button. The desperation in her voice was real, he could hear that much. But desperation born from what? Loss of a relationship she'd never actually cultivated? Or loss of access to a fortune she'd just discovered? He kept scrolling. Richard at 8 a.m., voice smooth and professional, already pivoting to business mode. "Marcus, this is Richard. I'd like to discuss a business proposition. I have contacts in logistics who could benefit from your platform. Let's meet." Delete. Diana at 2 in the afternoon, crying. "Marcus, please. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. Can we start over? For Lily's sake?" The phrase hit wrong. For Lily's sake. As if Lily had been suffering these past 6 years, as if Marcus had somehow failed her by keeping them away from the Whitmores' toxic judgment. He was about to delete the entire queue when one voicemail made him pause. Garrett Caldwell. The timestamp showed it had come in around noon, right between Diana's tearful apologies. "Marcus, it's Garrett Caldwell. I need to apologize, and I need to explain something the Whitmores don't know. Can you call me? This isn't about business. It's about Elena." Marcus played it again, listening for subtext, for manipulation, for whatever angle Garrett was working. But the man's voice carried something different from the others. Not desperation or calculation. Something closer to regret. He saved that one, deleted the rest. Inside, the house wrapped around him with familiar comfort. Photos of Elena lined the hallway, their wedding day, Lily's birth, 1,000 ordinary moments that added up to a life cut too short. Marcus paused at one taken 3 months before the diagnosis, Elena laughing at something off camera, sunlight catching the gold in her hair. She'd been trying to teach him to dance that day, patient and amused as he stepped on her toes. "What would you do, Elle?" The question fell into silence. Elena would have forgiven them already, probably. Would have seen the pain underneath their pride. Would have given them chance after chance, because that's who she was. But Elena had also chosen to leave, had walked away from this family, knowing they would never accept her choice, would never understand why a woman with her pedigree would settle for a man whose highest aspiration at the time was assistant manager at a warehouse. She'd chosen love over legacy, and they'd never forgiven her for it. Marcus moved to the kitchen, poured himself water, stood at the window overlooking the backyard where Lily played most afternoons. The swing set he'd installed last year stood dark against the fence, chains swaying slightly in the breeze. Ordinary, Safe. Exactly what he'd wanted for his daughter. His phone buzzed again. Not a call this time, a news alert. Forbes breaking news. Billionaire founder Nathan Hayes, finally identified, the single dad who built an empire in secret. The article loaded with a photo Marcus had never authorized, snapped by someone with a telephoto lens outside Lily's school 3 weeks ago. Him in jeans and a flannel shirt, Lily's backpack slung over his shoulder, completely unaware he was being photographed. The caption read, Hayes, 36, worth an estimated $3.8 billion, lives modestly in Connecticut suburb. Marcus read through mounting dread. Details about Elena's death, timeline of Haltech's growth, quotes from anonymous sources close to the family about the Whitmores' shock at discovering their son-in-law's true wealth. Someone had leaked everything, had turned his private life into public consumption. His work phone, the one only 5 people had the number for, started ringing. His assistant calling on a Sunday morning. That meant crisis. Tell me. Jessica's voice came through clipped and efficient. 17 media requests in the past hour. The Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, Bloomberg. Everyone wants an interview. Your personal email's been hacked. Some intern at Forbes got in through an old password. They published excerpts from your correspondence with Elena before she died. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone, hard enough to make the case creak. What excerpts? Love letters, mostly. Nothing too private, but enough to make this personal. The narrative they're running is billionaire secret identity, rags to riches, dead wife tragedy. They're eating it up. He could hear keyboard clicks in the background, Jessica already working damage control. Lily's school called. There are photographers at the gates. They're requesting you pick her up from the back entrance, and they're suggesting you might want to keep her home tomorrow. The world was closing in. Marcus had spent 6 years building walls between his public identity and his private life, keeping Nathan Hayes separate from Marcus the dad, from Marcus the man who coached Lily's soccer team and volunteered at the school library. All of it was collapsing now, privacy shredding like paper in a storm. Send security to the school. 2 guards, rotation shifts. I want someone there whenever Lily is. Already done. What about the media requests? Marcus looked at the Forbes article again, at the photo of him and Lily, at the invasion of everything he'd tried to protect. Set up 1 interview. My terms, my timeline, my outlet. I control the narrative from here. Which outlet? 60 Minutes. They're the only ones who'll give me enough time to tell the story right. Jessica made a note. Marcus could picture her in her home office, still in pajamas probably, fielding crisis on a Sunday morning, because that's what loyalty looked like when you paid someone enough to make it worth their while. There's one more thing. Richard Whitmore's office called. They're requesting a meeting to discuss mutual business interests. His assistant was very insistent that you'd want to hear what he has to offer. Block him. Block all of them. Already did. But Marcus, this isn't going away. The story's too good. Secret billionaire, tragic widow, class warfare with the in-laws. They're going to dig until there's nothing left to find. Marcus knew she was right. The moment Garrett had made the connection, the moment that table full of Whitmores had learned the truth, anonymity was over. Someone had called Forbes within hours, probably Diana with her desperate need for validation, maybe Richard seeing an angle. It didn't matter who. The damage was done. Do what you can. I'll handle my end. He hung up and stood in the silence of his kitchen, feeling the weight of exposure settle onto his shoulders. Tomorrow morning, Lily would wake up to a different world. One where her father's face was on magazine covers, where classmates' parents would whisper and point, where every friendship would be questioned and every kindness suspect. This was exactly what he'd tried to prevent. Sleep came in fragments. Marcus dozed on the couch, phone clutched in one hand, waking every hour to check for new developments. By dawn, he'd drunk 4 cups of coffee and read 27 articles about himself, each one more invasive than the last. Someone had found his undergraduate transcripts. Someone else had tracked down his first landlord, who described Marcus as quiet, paid rent on time, seemed overwhelmed after the wife died. At 6 a.m., Lily padded into the living room, hair mussed from sleep, wearing the oversized t-shirt she'd claimed from Marcus's drawer months ago.
"Daddy, why are you sleeping on the couch?"
He sat up, making room for her to curl against his side the way she did most Sunday mornings. "Couldn't sleep in my room. Thought I'd watch the sunrise." Lily accepted this without question, fitting herself into the crook of his arm. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching light creep across the backyard. Normal. For another few hours at least, they could pretend yesterday hadn't happened, that nothing had changed. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" Marcus smoothed her hair, already knowing the question would be hard. "Always." "Are we really rich? Like the superhero kind?" The comparison made him smile despite everything. "Yeah, sweetheart. Something like that." Lily processed this, brow furrowing in concentration. "So, why do we live here? Why don't we have a big house like Grandma Judith?" The question was inevitable. Marcus had rehearsed answers for years, preparing for the day when Lily would be old enough to understand that their modest life was a choice, not a necessity. "Do you like our house?" "I love our house. My room is perfect. And Mrs. Rodriguez lives next door, and she makes the best cookies." "Then that's why. We live here because it makes us happy. Money can buy a bigger house, but it can't buy better neighbors, or a cozier bedroom, or chocolate chip cookies that taste like home." Lily nodded slowly, accepting the logic with the flexibility of childhood. "Emma at school says her dad makes lots of money, and they have 3 cars. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Here it was, the comparison that would follow Lily for years now, the measuring stick other children would use. "Does Emma seem happy?" Lily considered this seriously. "She cries a lot. Her parents are getting divorced." "Money doesn't fix problems, baby. Sometimes it just makes them more expensive." They sat together watching the sunrise paint their ordinary backyard gold. Marcus wanted to freeze this moment, to keep Lily small enough to believe that happiness was simple, that cookies mattered more than cars, that love was the only currency that counted. His phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "School confirmed media presence. Recommend keeping Lily home. We'll send tutor if needed." Marcus typed back. On it. "Hey, sweetheart. How about we have a pajama day today? No school. Just us?" Lily's face lit up. "Can we make pancakes?" "We can make anything you want." They moved to the kitchen, Lily climbing onto her stool to help mix batter while Marcus heated the griddle. Flour dusted the counter, milk splashed on the floor, and, for a while, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only this: Sunday morning pancakes, his daughter's laughter, the simple routine they'd built together over 6 years of navigating grief and growth. The doorbell shattered the peace at 9 a.m. Marcus checked the security camera feed on his phone. Catherine Whitmore stood on his front porch, alone, wearing clothes he'd never seen her in before, jeans, a plain sweater, tennis shoes instead of her usual designer heels. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Stay here, Lily. Finish your pancakes.
Is that Grandma Catherine?
The hope in Lily's voice hurt more than Marcus wanted to admit. Despite everything, despite 6 years of being barely acknowledged, his daughter still wanted a grandmother. Yeah, baby, it is. He opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Catherine stood on the threshold, hands clasped in front of her like a supplicant.
May I come in?
No. The bluntness seemed to surprise her. She flinched, recovered, pressed on.
I need to speak with you, please. Just 5 minutes.
You've had 6 years to speak with me. 6 years to show up, to ask where your granddaughter sleeps at night, to demonstrate even the smallest interest in her life. Catherine's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes, real ones this time, not the practiced emotion Marcus had seen her deploy at charity functions.
I know I failed. Both of you. But I'm here now, and I'm asking for a chance to make it right.
The only reason you're here is because Garrett looked at his phone. If you hadn't made that connection, you'd still be treating me like hired help.
That's not...
She stopped, seemed to realize the denial was useless.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But does that mean Lily has to suffer? Does she have to lose her grandmother because I was too proud to see what mattered?
Marcus leaned against the doorframe, exhausted from lack of sleep and the weight of decisions that affected more than just him. Lily's never had a grandmother. You can't lose something you never possessed. The words landed like stones. Catherine actually stepped back, hand rising to her throat as if she'd been struck.
Please. I loved Elena too.
That made Marcus pause. Catherine's voice had broken on Elena's name, genuine grief surfacing through years of practiced control. Then where were you? When she was dying, when she needed her mother, when she spent nights crying because the pain was so bad she couldn't sleep. Where were you?
I came to the hospital every day in those last 2 weeks.
You sat in the hallway. You never came into her room, never held her hand, never told her you loved her. Catherine's face crumpled completely. She sagged against the porch railing, shoulders shaking with sobs she'd probably been holding back since the funeral 6 years ago.
I didn't know how. I'd spent so long being disappointed in her choices that I forgot how to just be her mother. And by the time I remembered, it was too late.
Marcus wanted to feel satisfaction at her breakdown, wanted vindication for all the times she'd made him feel small. But watching Catherine Whitmore fall apart on his porch, he felt only tired. Why are you really here, Catherine? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, mascara smearing.
Richard is in financial trouble. Bad investments over the past 3 years. He's leveraged everything, the house, the properties in Martha's Vineyard and Aspen. He needs $50 million, or he loses it all.
There it was, the truth underneath the tears. And he thinks I'll bail him out.
He knows you will. To protect Lily's reputation. To prevent the scandal of her grandfather filing for bankruptcy. He's already contacted his attorneys about filing for emergency custody, claiming you're exposing her to an unstable environment.
Marcus felt rage ignite in his chest, white-hot and clean. He's going to try to take my daughter.
He's desperate. Desperate men do terrible things.
Catherine looked up at him, and Marcus saw something in her face he'd never witnessed before. Genuine remorse.
I'm leaving him. I filed papers yesterday morning. The divorce will be final in 6 months.
The statement hung between them, too large to immediately process. You're leaving Richard.
I've spent 45 years in a marriage built on status and appearances. Elena saw through it. That's why she left, why she chose you. She wanted something real. Catherine's voice grew stronger, resolve hardening beneath the tears. I won't lose my granddaughter the way I lost my daughter. Richard wants your money. I want Lily. Not to take her from you, I know I have no right, but to be part of her life, the way I should have been from the beginning. Marcus studied her face, searching for manipulation, for the angle she was working. But Catherine Whitmore looked back at him with nothing but exhausted honesty. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. I haven't earned it. But I'm asking for the chance to try. Lily's voice called from the kitchen, bright and curious. Daddy, is Grandma staying for pancakes? Catherine's expression transformed. She looked past Marcus toward the sound of her granddaughter's voice, and something broke open in her face. Hope and longing and desperate need. Can I see her? Just for a moment? Marcus stepped aside. Catherine walked into his home for the first time, taking in the modest furniture, the photos of Elena covering every surface, the kitchen where Lily sat at the counter with syrup on her chin and joy in her eyes. She moved slowly, as if walking through a museum of everything she'd missed. Lily hopped down from her stool, cautious but curious. Hi, Grandma Catherine. Hello, sweetheart. Catherine knelt down, bringing herself to Lily's eye level. Up close, Marcus could see how much she'd aged in 6 years, lines deepening around her eyes, gray threading through hair that used to be perfectly colored. You look so much like your mother. Daddy says that too. He's right. She was the most beautiful person I've ever known, inside and out. Lily tilted her head, considering. Were you mean to my daddy because you thought we were poor? The question, delivered with childish directness, made Catherine flinch. She glanced up at Marcus, then back to Lily. Yes, I was, and that was very wrong of me. That's stupid. Yes, it was stupid. Lily processed this, the wheels turning visibly behind her eyes. Daddy says everyone deserves a second chance, even people who were mean. Catherine's voice came out barely above a whisper. Your daddy is a very wise man. I know. Lily smiled, the simple confidence of a child who'd never doubted her father's love. Can you stay for pancakes? Daddy makes them really good. Marcus watched Catherine struggle for composure, watched her nod because words seemed impossible. I would love to stay for pancakes. They ate at the kitchen counter, an awkward trinity trying to navigate unfamiliar territory. Lily chattered about school, about her friends, about the soccer game next weekend where she was starting as forward. Catherine listened with the intensity of someone memorizing every word, every detail, storing away pieces of a granddaughter she'd never bothered to know. When Lily excused herself to get dressed, Catherine turned to Marcus. Thank you for letting me stay. This doesn't fix anything. I know. And I still don't trust you. I know that too. Marcus poured more coffee, buying time to organize thoughts that felt too large for words. If you want to be part of Lily's life, you need to earn it. Not with money, not with apologies, with time and consistency and actual presence. Catherine nodded, waiting for more. You say you're leaving Richard. Prove it. Move out. Get your own place. File the papers. You say you want to know Lily? Prove it. Show up for soccer games, for parent-teacher conferences, for the ordinary, boring moments that actually matter. He set his coffee cup down with deliberate care.
And you need to understand what it's like to be the person you spent 6 years looking down on. Catherine's eyes widened.
What do you mean?
Get a job. Any job. I don't care what. Minimum wage, entry level, something where you have to clock in and take orders from people half your age. Live on that salary for 6 months. No trust fund, no family money, no credit cards Richard's paying off. The proposition clearly shocked her. Catherine Whitmore hadn't worked a day in her adult life, had spent 4 decades as a professional socialite, managing charity galas and country club committees.
You want me to work?
I want you to understand. Elena worked as a barista when we met. She chose that life, chose to understand what it meant to earn your own way. If you want to be part of Lily's world, you need to understand why she chose what she chose. Catherine sat very still, processing. Marcus waited for her to refuse, to make excuses, to reveal that her transformation was as superficial as everything else about her. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. When do I start? The question caught Marcus off guard. He'd expected resistance, negotiation, some attempt to bargain her way into easier terms. You're serious?
I'm serious. I'll get a job, move out, live on whatever I earn. 6 months. And then we'll talk about what comes next.
She stood, gathering her purse.
I need to ask you something before I go. Richard's going to file for custody. He's hiring one of the best family law attorneys in Connecticut. This is going to get ugly.
Let it get ugly. I've got better lawyers.
It's not about lawyers. It's about what Lily will hear, what she'll see. Richard will argue you're an unfit parent, that you deliberately hid your wealth, that you've exposed her to an unstable environment. He'll drag your name through every tabloid and courtroom in the state.
Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Then I'll make sure everyone knows why. The grandfather who ignored his granddaughter for 6 years suddenly cares about her welfare the moment he discovers she has a trust fund. I'll testify against him. In court, in public, wherever you need me. I'll tell them everything, how we treated you, how we neglected Lily, how Richard only cares about money. The offer was unexpected enough to give Marcus pause. Why would you do that? He's your husband.
He stopped being my husband years ago. Now he's just a man I share a house with, and not even that for much longer. But Lily is my granddaughter, Elena's daughter, and I won't let Richard use her as leverage in his financial games. Catherine moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Garrett Caldwell wants to speak with you. He knows things about our family that you need to hear. Things about Elena.
I got his voicemail.
Call him back. He loved Elena too, in his own way. Before you.
The revelation shouldn't have surprised Marcus, but it did. He thought about Garrett's uncomfortable recognition at dinner, the way his eyes had tracked from Marcus to Lily and back. Elena never mentioned him.
Because she didn't want you to know she'd chosen you over someone her parents approved of. She didn't want you to feel like you'd won some competition. You were never competing, Marcus. You were just the only one who saw her for who she really was. Catherine left, and Marcus stood in his doorway, watching her walk to a car he didn't recognize. Something modest and American instead of her usual European luxury sedan. She was already changing, already trying to become someone different. Whether that transformation would last was anyone's guess. The week that followed felt like living in a fishbowl. Marcus hired security to patrol their street, kept Lily home from school, and watched his private life become public entertainment. The Forbes article spawned a dozen think pieces about wealth inequality, about secret billionaires, about single fathers and class warfare. Everyone had an opinion about Marcus Hayes and his hidden empire,
His phone rang constantly. Media requests, business opportunities, people from his past suddenly remembering they'd always believed in him. Marcus ignored them all except the one call that mattered, his attorney, preparing for Richard's custody challenge. He filed this morning, emergency petition claiming you're exposing Lily to media harassment and living an unstable lifestyle inconsistent with proper parenting. Marcus listened to the legal jargon, the procedural details, the timeline of hearings and responses. When's the court date? 2 weeks. Judge Morrison. She's fair, doesn't tolerate games. But Richard's attorney is good. James Kellerman used to do corporate litigation before switching to family law. He'll make this about your judgment, about hiding your wealth, about anything except Richard's actual motives. Then we make sure the judge understands those motives, financial records, timeline of his sudden interest in Lily, testimony about his treatment of us over the past 6 years. I'll need witnesses, people who can speak to your parenting, to Lily's well-being, to the family dynamics. Marcus thought about his options. The list of people who really knew him was short, by design. Catherine Whitmore will testify. She's divorcing Richard, and she's willing to go on record about his financial situation and his neglect of Lily. His attorney made notes, strategizing. What about Diana? The sister could be powerful if she's willing to contradict her father. I'll ask, but I'm not counting on it. The call ended, and Marcus sat in his home office, staring at case files and legal briefs, trying to prepare for a battle he'd never wanted to fight. Through the wall, he could hear Lily watching cartoons, her laughter bright and uncomplicated. She had no idea that in 2 weeks, a judge would determine whether Marcus's choices had been parenting or negligence. His work phone buzzed. Garrett Caldwell's name appeared on the screen. Marcus hesitated, then answered. This is Marcus. Thank you for taking my call. I wasn't sure you would. Garrett's voice carried none of the polished confidence from dinner, none of the Harvard MBA swagger. He sounded tired, maybe even nervous. Catherine said you have information I need to hear. I do, but not over the phone. Can we meet? Somewhere private? Marcus considered the risk. Garrett was engaged to Diana, tangled up in Whitmore family politics, potentially hostile. But Catherine had vouched for him, and Marcus trusted her assessment more than he'd expected to. Where? They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Stamford, neutral territory away from Greenwich society and prying cameras. Marcus left Lily with Mrs. Rodriguez, the neighbor who'd been more family than the Whitmores ever managed, and drove through afternoon traffic, trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. Garrett was waiting at a corner table, 2 coffees already ordered. He stood when Marcus approached, offered his hand. The handshake was different this time. No dominance play, just 2 men acknowledging each other. I ordered you black coffee. That's what you were drinking at dinner, so I figured... It's fine. What did you want to tell me? Garrett sat, seeming to gather himself. I dated Elena in college. Junior year, about 8 months. Our families were thrilled. Finally, the Whitmore heir was dating someone suitable. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Elena never mentioned you. Because she didn't want you to feel like you'd taken her from me. But you didn't take her, Marcus. She left me to find you. There's a difference. Garrett wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, staring into the dark liquid. I was everything the Whitmores wanted. Right school, right family, right career track. And Elena was miserable with me. I knew it, I just didn't want to admit it. When she broke up with me to be with some guy she met at a coffee shop, Catherine was furious. Called Elena ungrateful, said she was throwing her life away on someone who would never amount to anything. The story filled in gaps Marcus had never known existed. Elena had told him about her family's disapproval, but she'd framed it as general class prejudice, not specific betrayal of someone they'd already chosen for her.
Why are you telling me this?
Because I want you to understand what you're up against. Richard sees you as the mistake that ruined his daughter's life. Catherine sees you as the reason Elena left her.
They've been punishing you for 6 years, not because you're poor, though that made it easier, but because you represent everything they couldn't control.
Garrett leaned forward, intensity replacing his earlier hesitation. Elena chose you over everything they offered her, over money, over status, over me, and they've never forgiven either of you for that choice. Marcus absorbed this, recalibrating his understanding of the Whitmore family dynamics. You're engaged to Diana. Was engaged. We called it off this morning. I can't marry into a family that's about to crucify a man whose only crime was loving their daughter better than they did. The admission seemed to cost Garrett something. His shoulders slumped slightly, exhaustion bleeding through his professional veneer. I came here to tell you that I'm testifying on your behalf. Whatever you need, character witness, business reference, someone to explain that Haltech's success is legitimate and earned. I'll do it.
Why? You don't owe me anything.
No, but I owe Elena. She deserves to have her daughter grow up with a father who puts her first, who measures success by love instead of money. That's you, Marcus. Not me, not anyone the Whitmores would have chosen. You. They sat in silence for a moment, two men connected by a woman neither of them would ever see again, both trying to honor her memory in their own ways. There's something else you should know. Richard's planning to argue that you manipulated Catherine into divorcing him, that you're using your wealth to destroy the Whitmore family as revenge. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter. Catherine left him because she finally saw who he really is. I know. But Richard's good at spinning narratives. He'll make it sound like you're the villain, like everything that's happening is your fault. Let him try. The truth has a way of coming out in court. Garrett nodded, finished his coffee. One last thing. Diana wants to apologize.
She knows she doesn't deserve forgiveness, knows what she said at dinner was cruel and stupid. But she wanted me to tell you she's sorry, and she's willing to testify too if you'll have her. Marcus thought about Diana at that dinner table, laughing at his expense, treating Lily like an afterthought. Then he thought about Lily asking why her aunt never called, never sent birthday cards, never acted like family. Tell Diana if she wants to apologize, she can do it herself. And if she wants to testify, she can call my attorney. But I'm not making this easy for her. Fair enough. They parted ways in the parking lot, two allies in a war neither of them had chosen. Marcus drove home through gathering darkness, mind churning through strategy and contingency plans. Richard Whitmore wanted a fight? He'd get one. But it would be fought on Marcus's terms, with truth as the primary weapon. The house was quiet when he arrived. Mrs. Rodriguez had already taken Lily home, leaving a note that Lily had eaten dinner and finished her homework and was excited about having a sleepover with her daughter. Normal life continuing despite the chaos swirling around them. Marcus stood alone in his living room, surrounded by photos of Elena, and made 3 phone calls. First, his attorney. Prepare for a custody battle. I want full discovery on Richard's finances, timeline of his interactions with Lily, everything. And add Diana Whitmore and Garrett Caldwell to the witness list. Second, his publicist. Set up that 60 Minutes interview. I want to tell this story before Richard twists it into something unrecognizable. Third, his assistant.
Establish a trust fund for Lily. 100 million, accessible at 25. But there's a condition. She has to work a real job for at least 2 years first. Minimum wage, entry level, something that teaches her what money actually costs. The pieces were falling into place. Richard wanted war. Marcus would give him one. But it would be a war fought with transparency and truth, with every decision documented and every motive laid bare. If the Whitmores wanted to claim he was an unfit parent for teaching his daughter the value of work, for prioritizing character over wealth, for building something from nothing, then let them make that argument in open court. Let them explain to a judge why 6 years of neglect should suddenly translate into custody rights. Let them justify their sudden concern for a granddaughter they'd barely acknowledged. Marcus looked at Elena's photo one more time, at her smile and the light in her eyes, and made a promise to the memory of the woman who'd believed in him when he was nobody. I won't let them take her, Elle. I won't let them turn our daughter into what you ran away from. Whatever it costs, whatever I have to do, Lily stays with me. The phone buzzed one more time. A text from Catherine. Started job hunting today. Starbucks is hiring baristas. Thought that was fitting. Thank you for the chance. Marcus stared at the message, then typed back. Elena would be proud. He hit send and watched the message disappear into the digital void, carrying with it the first fragile thread of something that might, eventually, become forgiveness. The 60-minute studio felt colder than Marcus expected, all hard surfaces and professional distance. Sound technicians adjusted microphones, while lighting crews positioned floods to eliminate shadows. The host, a woman Marcus recognized from years of Sunday evening viewing, sat across from him, reviewing notes, her expression neutral and assessing. We'll start with the basics. How you built Halltech, why you kept it secret, what you want people to understand about your choices. Then we'll move into the Whitmore situation and the custody battle. Marcus nodded, throat dry despite the water bottle they'd provided. This interview would reach 20 million viewers, 20 million people forming opinions about whether he was a good father or a man whose pride had damaged his daughter. The cameras went live. The host's professional warmth activated like a switch. Marcus Hayes, thank you for sitting down with us. You're one of the wealthiest self-made billionaires in America, yet until 2 weeks ago, almost no one knew your name. Why reveal yourself now? Marcus met her eyes, forcing himself to ignore the cameras, the crew, the weight of judgment. I didn't reveal myself. You found me. But I can control what story gets told, and I'd rather it be the truth than speculation. Let's start with that truth. You built Halltech Solutions while raising your daughter alone after your wife died. Take us through those early years. The question opened a door Marcus had kept closed for 6 years. He thought about Elena's last weeks, about coding through the night while Lily slept, about the moment he'd realized that grief could either destroy him or fuel something greater. When Elena died, I had a 2-year-old daughter and about $8,000 in savings. I could either fall apart or figure out how to build a future worth living. So I taught myself to code. Started freelancing, then consulting. Then I saw a gap in the freight logistics market that nobody was addressing efficiently. He paused, gathering the memories that still hurt to touch. I wrote the first version of Halltech's platform in a studio apartment in Bridgeport while Lily napped. 18-hour days, surviving on coffee, and the promise I'd made to Elena that our daughter would never doubt she was loved. Your wife believed in you when you had nothing. Is that why you built this? I built it to prove she was right, about me, about what mattered, about the choice she made when she married someone her family considered beneath her. The host leaned forward slightly, sensing the thread that would make this interview memorable. The Whitmore family, your late wife's parents. They're currently suing for custody of your daughter, claiming you're an unfit parent. How do you respond to that? Marcus felt anger rise, but kept his voice level. For 6 years, Richard and Judith Whitmore treated me and their granddaughter like we were embarrassments. They never offered to help, never asked how Lily was doing, never showed the slightest interest in being part of her life. Now that they know about my company, suddenly they care deeply about her welfare. What changed? They found out about the money. That's all that changed. My parenting is the same. My devotion to Lily is the same. Our life is the same. The only difference is, now they see dollar signs instead of disappointment. The host consulted her notes, expression sharpening. Richard Whitmore's attorneys claim you deliberately deceived your in-laws, that you exposed Lily to an unstable environment by hiding your wealth, that she's been living in poverty when she could have had advantages. Lily has never lived in poverty. She has a stable home, excellent education, health care, everything a child needs. What she didn't have was a sense that people valued her for her bank account instead of her character. Marcus felt his hands tighten on the armrests. I wanted my daughter to grow up knowing that friendship is earned through kindness, not bought with money. I wanted her to understand hard work before she understood privilege. Those aren't the values of an unfit parent. Those are the values my wife and I chose together. So you don't regret keeping your success secret? I regret that the truth came out the way it did. I regret that Lily had to see her family's reaction, had to learn that some people only care when you're worth something to them. But I don't regret protecting her from that knowledge for as long as I could. The interview continued for another 40 minutes, Marcus laying out the timeline of his success, the deliberate choices he'd made, the reasons behind every decision. He talked about Elena, her courage, her values, her determination that their daughter would know love mattered more than status. He talked about the Whitmores' neglect, their sudden pivot when wealth entered the equation, their transparent motives in seeking custody. When the cameras finally cut, the host offered her hand. That was powerful. You gave people a lot to think about. Marcus drove home through evening traffic, exhausted and uncertain. The interview would air in 3 days, right before the custody hearing. It was a calculated risk. Public opinion wouldn't determine the legal outcome, but it might influence how aggressively Richard's attorneys pushed their narrative. His phone showed missed calls from Jessica, from his attorney, from Diana. He ignored them all until he pulled into his driveway and saw Catherine Whitmore sitting on his front steps wearing a Starbucks uniform. She stood as he approached, coffee-stained apron still tied around her waist. I just finished my shift. I wanted you to see that I'm actually doing this. Marcus took in the green apron, the name tag reading Catherine, the exhaustion evident in her face. How long have you been working there? 3 weeks. I start at 5 a.m., work until noon, then go apartment hunting. I found a place in Stamford, 1 bedroom, 600 square feet, nothing like what I'm used to. I sign the lease tomorrow. She laughed, the sound carrying genuine humor and disbelief. My feet hurt constantly. I smell like espresso beans. I had to learn how to use a cash register at 68 years old. And you know what? I haven't felt this alive in decades. Marcus studied her face, searching for performance, for the calculated emotion she'd deployed so effectively at charity galas. But Catherine looked back at him with nothing but raw honesty. Can I see Lily? Just for a few minutes? He considered refusing, maintaining boundaries, making her work harder for access to her granddaughter. But something in Catherine's face, maybe the coffee stains, maybe the humility, made him relent. She's inside doing homework. You can stay for dinner if you want. Catherine's eyes widened.
Really?
Really. But you're helping cook, and you're doing dishes after. They found Lily at the kitchen table, math worksheet spread in front of her, pencil tucked behind her ear. She looked up as they entered, face lighting with surprised joy.
Grandma Catherine, you're wearing a Starbucks uniform like Mommy used to.
The observation hit Catherine visibly. She pressed one hand to her chest, blinking back tears. Your daddy told me your mother worked there. I thought it would help me understand what her life was like. Lily hopped down from her chair, coming to examine the apron with serious attention. Do you make the drinks yourself? I'm learning. Today someone ordered something called a venti caramel macchiato with extra foam, and I completely panicked. Mommy said those were the hardest. She used to practice at home. Catherine knelt down, bringing herself to Lily's level. Did she? What else did she practice? And just like that, Lily launched into stories about Elena that Marcus had told her over the years, memories passed from father to daughter to grandmother who'd missed everything. Catherine listened with the intensity of someone memorizing sacred texts, absorbing details about the daughter she'd lost, the woman she'd never really known. Marcus started dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, while Catherine and Lily talked. He listened to their conversation, heard Lily's easy warmth and Catherine's careful questions, and felt something cautiously hopeful taking root. Maybe people could change. Maybe redemption wasn't just a story people told themselves. They ate at the kitchen counter, Catherine asking about school and soccer and Lily's favorite books. The conversation felt almost normal, like family dinners were supposed to feel, like what Marcus had wanted for his daughter since Elena died. After dinner, Catherine rolled up her sleeves and tackled the dishes while Lily dried. Marcus watched them work together, grandmother and granddaughter finding a rhythm, and thought about Elena watching from wherever she was now. She'd forgive her mother eventually. Elena always forgave. Catherine left around 8, hugging Lily goodbye with fierce tenderness. Can I come to your soccer game this weekend? Lily's face lit up. Really? You want to come? I would love to come, if your father says it's okay. Both of them looked at Marcus. He felt the weight of the decision, the message it would send, the door it would open. Game's at 10 a.m., Jefferson Park, Field 3. Catherine's smile transformed her face, knocking years off her carefully maintained appearance. I'll be there. After she left, Marcus tucked Lily into bed, listening to her chatter about how Grandma Catherine was different now, nicer, more like a real grandma. He kissed her forehead and retreated to his office, where legal documents waited for review. The custody hearing was scheduled for Monday, 4 days away. His attorney had assembled a formidable case, financial records proving Richard's desperation, timeline of the Whitmores' neglect, testimony from teachers and neighbors attesting to Lily's well-being. But court cases were unpredictable, and judges had surprising amounts of discretion in family law. His phone buzzed. Diana's name appeared on the screen. Marcus hesitated, then answered. This is Marcus. Diana's voice came through thick with emotion. I saw you were doing the 60 Minutes interview. I wanted to call before it airs, before the hearing, before... I just needed to say I'm sorry. Marcus waited, giving her nothing. I was cruel at that dinner. I've been cruel for 6 years, treating you like you were nothing, making Lily feel like she didn't belong in her own family. There's no excuse for it. She took a shaky breath. I lived in Elena's shadow my whole life. She was smarter, kinder, braver. When she chose you over Garrett, over everything our parents wanted for her,
I told myself she was being stupid. Because if Elena was wrong, then maybe I wasn't the failure our parents made me feel like.
The confession poured out, years of resentment and inadequacy given voice. But she wasn't wrong. She was right about you. Right about what mattered, right about everything. And I've spent 6 years punishing you for making me feel like I'd chosen wrong. Marcus felt some of his anger dissolve, replaced by something closer to pity. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to testify at the hearing. Not for Dad. For you. I want to tell the judge what really happened that night, how we treated you, why Dad suddenly cares about Lily. I want to make this right. Testifying against your father will have consequences. I know. I'm already out of the family business. Mom's cutting me off financially. Dad's threatening to contest my inheritance. But none of that matters if I can't look at myself in the mirror. Marcus made a decision that surprised him. Have your attorney contact mine. We'll coordinate testimony. Thank you. And Marcus? Elena would be proud of you. Of how you've raised Lily. Of how you've handled all this. I know I have no right to say that, but it's true. The call ended, and Marcus sat in the silence of his office, thinking about forgiveness and redemption, and whether people could fundamentally change. 2 weeks ago, the Whitmores had been unified in their contempt. Now Catherine was serving coffee, Diana was breaking from Richard, and the family was fracturing along lines of character instead of blood. Elena would have found the poetry in it. Saturday morning dawned clear and cold, perfect soccer weather. Marcus and Lily arrived at Jefferson Park 45 minutes early to warm up. The field was already filling with parents setting up folding chairs, kids in matching jerseys practicing drills, the organized chaos of youth sports. Catherine appeared at 9:55, 10 minutes before kickoff, wearing jeans and a fleece jacket Marcus had never seen before. She'd brought a folding chair and a thermos of coffee, looking nervously uncertain about where to sit. Lily spotted her and waved frantically. Catherine's face transformed with joy and relief. The game was brutal. 8-year-olds had no concept of field position or passing, just mad scrambles toward the ball and occasional goals that seemed to surprise everyone. Lily played with ferocious determination, her ponytail swinging as she dodged defenders and fought for possession. In the second half, she scored off a corner kick, the ball ricocheting off her shin and into the net, more by accident than design. The parents erupted in cheers. Lily turned toward the sideline, searching for Marcus's face among the crowd, needing his approval before she could celebrate. He stood and applauded, throat tight with pride. Beside him, Catherine wiped tears from her eyes. Elena used to do that. Turned to check if I was watching before she got excited about anything. I was usually too busy talking to other parents, networking, making connections. I missed so much. She looked at Marcus with raw regret. Thank you for letting me be here, for giving me a chance to not miss this. After the game, a 3-2 victory that had Lily bouncing with excitement, they went for ice cream. Normal, ordinary, the kind of Saturday afternoon Marcus had dreamed about during those early years when grief and responsibility felt like drowning. Lily sat between them at a picnic table, chocolate ice cream on her chin, recounting every play of the game with the detailed analysis of a seasoned athlete. Catherine listened like it was the most important story ever told. And maybe for her it was. Maybe this was what redemption looked like. Showing up for the small moments, the ordinary ones, the times that didn't make headlines, but built the architecture of love. Marcus's phone buzzed. His attorney. The 60 Minutes interview aired. It's everywhere. Twitter's trending with hashtags supporting you. Richard's attorneys are scrambling to do damage control. And I've got 3 reporters asking if you'll give follow-up interviews. What about the judge? Harder to say. Morrison doesn't care about public opinion. but she does care about truth. Your interview laid out a pretty compelling narrative about the Whitmores' motives. Richard's team will have to counter it Monday, and I'm not sure how they can without looking worse. Marcus watched Lily chase a napkin that had blown away, heard Catherine's laughter as she helped capture it. Normal. This was what he'd been fighting for, the right to raise his daughter in normal, to teach her that ice cream after soccer games mattered more than trust funds and society pages. What do you need from me before Monday? Just show up ready to tell the truth. That's all you've ever needed to do. Monday arrived with the inevitability of gravity. Marcus dressed in a suit he rarely wore, feeling constrained and formal. Lily stayed home with Mrs. Rodriguez, blissfully unaware that her future was being decided in a Connecticut courtroom. The family court building was smaller than Marcus expected, less imposing than he'd feared. Just hallways and fluorescent lights, and rooms where lives got rearranged by people in black robes. His attorney met him at the entrance, briefcase in hand, expression confident but tense. Catherine Whitmore arrived an hour ago. Diana's already inside. Garrett Caldwell is in the witness room. We're as ready as we can be. They entered courtroom 4C. Richard sat at the plaintiff's table with his attorney James Kellerman, both men radiating expensive confidence. Richard's eyes found Marcus, and the contempt in them was pure and undiluted. This wasn't about Lily's welfare. This was about punishment, about revenge for daring to be more successful than Richard could ever accept. Judge Morrison took the bench at 9 a.m. sharp. She was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes that seemed to see through performance to truth underneath. We're here regarding Whitmore versus Hayes, emergency custody petition. Mr. Kellerman, you may begin. Richard's attorney stood, smoothing his tie with practiced ease. Your Honor, we're here because my client is deeply concerned about his granddaughter's welfare. Mr. Hayes has demonstrated a pattern of deceptive behavior, hiding his substantial wealth while allowing his daughter to live in circumstances far below what she deserved. Kellerman paced, warming to his argument. For 6 years, this child believed her father was struggling financially. She wore dresses that were too small, lived in a modest apartment, attended public school while her father sat on a $4 billion fortune. This isn't prudent parenting. This is psychological manipulation. Marcus felt his attorney tense beside him, but she remained silent. They'd expected this line of attack. Furthermore, Mr. Hayes deliberately exposed his daughter to media harassment by maintaining this deception. When the truth emerged, paparazzi swarmed her school, her privacy was violated, her entire world was upended. All because her father valued his ego over her well-being. Kellerman returned to his seat, satisfied he'd landed the opening blow. Marcus's attorney, Jennifer Kim, rose with calm precision. Your Honor, Mr. Kellerman's argument assumes that wealth equals good parenting and modest living equals neglect. The law doesn't support that assumption. Marcus Hayes provided his daughter with excellent education, health care, a safe home, and consistent, loving presence. That he chose not to spoil her with luxury is a parenting choice, not abuse. She pulled up documents on her tablet, displaying them on the courtroom screen. What Mr. Kellerman fails to mention is that Richard Whitmore had zero contact with his granddaughter for 6 years. No birthday cards, no phone calls, no visits. The court record will show that Mr. Whitmore's interest in Lily Hayes emerged exactly 2 weeks after Forbes revealed Marcus Hayes' net worth. Jennifer's voice hardened. This isn't about Lily's welfare. This is about Richard Whitmore's financial desperation and his attempt to access his granddaughter's trust fund through court-ordered custody. Judge Morrison made notes, expression unreadable. I'll hear testimony. Mr. Kellerman, call your first witness. Richard took the stand, projecting grandfatherly concern with the skill of someone who'd spent a lifetime performing emotions he didn't feel. He spoke about his love for Elena, his devastation at her death, his desire to honor her memory by caring for her daughter. I admit I made mistakes. I let grief and stubbornness keep me from Lily when I should have been present. But when I learned about Marcus's deception, I realized my granddaughter needed protection from someone who would lie to her for years.
Jennifer cross-examined with surgical precision. Mr. Whitmore, in 6 years, how many times did you call to check on Lily? Richard hesitated. I'm not certain of the exact number. Would you say more than 10 times? Perhaps not. More than 5? Silence. Mr. Whitmore, the phone records we've subpoenaed show you called Marcus Hayes exactly 3 times in 6 years. Once to inform him of a family funeral, once to suggest Lily might benefit from boarding school, and once 2 weeks ago after learning about his wealth. Is that accurate? Richard's composure cracked slightly. Phone calls aren't the only measure of caring. What other measures did you employ? Birthday gifts? Holiday visits? Invitations to family gatherings that didn't involve subtle insults about Marcus's financial situation? Kellerman objected.
Judge Morrison sustained it, but the damage was done. Richard stepped down, looking diminished, his performance undermined by simple facts. Jennifer called Diana next. Marcus watched his sister-in-law take the stand, saw her hands trembling as she was sworn in. She looked directly at Richard as she began to speak, and her voice carried the weight of years of silence breaking. My father asked me to lie today. He wanted me to say Marcus was violent, unstable, unsuitable. But that's not true. Marcus is the most devoted father I've ever witnessed. Richard's face went purple with rage. Kellerman half rose, then sat back down, calculating that an outburst would make things worse. The night Marcus's identity was revealed, we were cruel. My mother, my father, me, our whole family. We mocked his truck, his clothes, his job. We tried to take Lily away because we assumed Marcus couldn't provide for her. Diana's voice grew stronger. But we were wrong. We measured worth in dollars and missed everything that mattered. Marcus gave Lily stability, love, values. He taught her that character matters more than money. Those aren't the lessons of an unfit parent. Those are the lessons my sister Elena wanted her daughter to learn. She looked at Marcus now, eyes bright with unshed tears. Elena chose Marcus over everything our family offered because she saw who he really was. And she was right. She was always right. The testimony continued for 3 more hours. Catherine took the stand and methodically dismantled Richard's narrative, confirming his financial desperation and his transparent motives. Garrett testified about Marcus's business acumen and legitimate wealth, countering any suggestion that the money was suspicious or unstable. Teachers from Lily's school described a well-adjusted child from a loving home. Finally, Jennifer called Marcus to the stand. The questions came rapid fire, covering his parenting decisions, his reasons for privacy, his relationship with the Whitmores. Marcus answered each one honestly, refusing to perform or exaggerate, trusting that truth would be enough. Why didn't you tell the Whitmores about your success? Marcus looked at Richard as he answered. Because I wanted to know who would love my daughter when they thought I had nothing. I wanted to understand their character before I let them influence hers. And what did you learn? That they weren't capable of loving Lily for who she is, only for what she represents. Judge Morrison intervened. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to ask you a direct question. If I grant your petition and deny Mr. Whitmore's request, what role, if any, will the Whitmore family have in your daughter's life?
Marcus took a breath, thinking about Catherine at the soccer game, about Diana's testimony, about the possibility of redemption. My late wife loved her family.
She would want Lily to know them, to have that connection. But on my terms, with boundaries that protect my daughter from being valued for her bank account instead of her character. Can you be more specific? Catherine Whitmore is earning her way back into Lily's life through consistent presence and genuine change. If she continues that pattern, I'm open to supervised visits becoming regular custody arrangements. Diana has begun to make amends, and I'm willing to see where that leads. But Richard? Marcus looked directly at his father-in-law. Richard Whitmore has demonstrated that he views my daughter as a financial asset. Until that changes fundamentally, he has no place in her life. Judge Morrison made final notes, then addressed both tables. I'll render my decision this afternoon. Court has adjourned until 2 p.m. The waiting room was silent, except for nervous breathing and the hum of fluorescent lights. Marcus sat with Jennifer, reviewing testimony, trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. Catherine appeared with coffee. She'd left the courtroom rather than sit near Richard, and handed Marcus a cup without speaking. At 2 p.m. they reconvened. Judge Morrison took the bench, expression grave. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence presented. This is one of the clearer cases I've seen regarding parental fitness and grandparent motivation. She looked at Richard. Mr. Whitmore, your concern for your granddaughter appeared exactly when you learned about financial resources. Your 6-year absence speaks louder than any testimony. Your petition is denied. Richard's attorney started to object. Judge Morrison cut him off. Furthermore, I'm granting a restraining order. You are not to contact Marcus Hayes or Lily Hayes for a period of 1 year. If, after that time, you wish to pursue a relationship with your granddaughter, you may petition this court. But, based on evidence presented, your motives are financial rather than familial. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Hayes, your parenting choices are unconventional but legal. You provided your daughter with stability, education, and love. That you chose not to lavish her with luxury is your prerogative as a parent. Petition for full custody granted. The gavel fell. Richard stood abruptly, chair scraping against floor, and stormed from the courtroom without looking back. His attorney gathered documents with professional detachment, already mentally moving to the next case. Catherine approached the bench, asking Judge Morrison something Marcus couldn't hear. The judge nodded, made a note, and Catherine returned to where Marcus stood with tears streaming down her face. She's giving me supervised visitation. 2 afternoons a week, building toward unsupervised if you agree. I get to be Lily's grandmother. Marcus felt exhaustion and relief crash over him simultaneously. It was done. The battle was won. Lily was safe. They left the courthouse together, Marcus, Jennifer, Catherine, Diana, Garrett. An unlikely coalition bound by the memory of a woman who'd known how to love without condition. Outside, reporters waited with cameras and questions, but Marcus walked past them all, focused only on getting home to his daughter. Lily met him at the door, launched herself into his arms with the unquestioning trust that made every fight worthwhile. Did you win, Daddy? He held her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the simple joy of her presence. Yeah, baby. We won. 3 months later, Marcus stood in his kitchen on a Sunday morning making pancakes while Lily helped measure flour. The routine had become sacred, these weekend mornings when the rest of the world disappeared and there was only this, father and daughter, ordinary and precious. The doorbell rang. Catherine arrived with grocery bags, letting herself in with the spare key Marcus had given her last month. She wore her Starbucks uniform still, having come straight from her morning shift, and she brought ingredients for Elena's cinnamon roll recipe.
Lily abandoned the pancakes to hug her grandmother. Catherine wrapped her arms around her granddaughter with the fierce tenderness of someone who understood how close she'd come to losing this forever. They cooked together, the three of them crowded in Marcus's modest kitchen while cinnamon and sugar filled the air. Catherine talked about her assistant manager promotion, about the apartment she'd furnished with second-hand finds, about the life she was building from scratch at 68 years old. Diana showed up around 10, tentative as always, still learning how to be part of this family she'd dismissed for so long. She brought coffee from a local shop. Not Starbucks, she'd explained once, because she didn't want Catherine to feel like she was showing off, and settled at the counter to help Lily with homework. The phone rang. Garrett, checking if anyone needed anything from the store. He had become an unexpected fixture in their lives, this man who'd loved Elena first, but understood that Marcus had loved her better. Sometimes love meant stepping aside. Sometimes it meant showing up anyway, being present without expecting center stage. They gathered around Marcus's kitchen table, an assembled family built from wreckage and choice, not related by blood in the ways that traditionally mattered, but connected by something stronger, by the work of showing up, of changing, of earning the privilege of belonging. Lily looked around at the faces surrounding her and smiled with the uncomplicated happiness of a child who'd never doubted she was loved.
Daddy, can I ask you something?
Marcus smoothed her hair, the gesture automatic after 9 years of fatherhood. Always, sweetheart. Are you glad Grandma Catherine came to dinner that night? The question was more complicated than Lily realized. Marcus thought about that evening, about the humiliation and the revelation, about everything that had cascaded from one moment of truth. I'm glad where we ended up, even if the journey was hard. Catherine's eyes met his across the table, gratitude and understanding passing between them. Lily nodded, satisfied with an answer that acknowledged reality without dwelling on pain.
Grandma, I need to apologize to you.
Catherine looked startled.
For what, sweetheart? For all the years you weren't there. For making Daddy feel bad. For not seeing how special we were.
The apology, delivered with child-logic directness, made Catherine press her hand to her mouth. She looked at Marcus, asking silent permission for what came next. He nodded. Catherine knelt beside Lily's chair, taking her granddaughter's hands.
You're right. I should apologize for all of that. I was wrong, and there's no excuse. But you know what your daddy taught me? What? That the important thing isn't where you start. It's where you finish.
Lily considered this seriously.
Like my math test. I got a C, but I studied hard and fixed it to an A.
Marcus laughed despite himself. Exactly like your math test, baby. The phone rang again. Diana answered, listened, then held it out to Marcus.
It's for you. Someone named Jessica?
Marcus took the call, stepping into the hallway. What's up? His assistant's voice carried barely contained excitement.
We just got confirmation. The Department of Defense contract came through. $20 million over 3 years. Haltech is now officially a defense contractor.
Marcus absorbed the news, the implications, the opportunities. 3 years ago, this would have felt like victory. Now it felt like Tuesday. Great, send me the paperwork to review. Anything else? That's it. Enjoy your Sunday. He returned to the kitchen where his family waited. Diana had moved on to showing Lily photos from Elena's college years. Catherine was frosting the cinnamon rolls with a concentration of someone learning skills she should have mastered decades ago. Garrett had arrived and was setting the table, fitting himself into the routine with the ease of practice. Marcus watched them, this improbable collection of people who who'd found their way to each other through grief and mistakes and the stubborn insistence that change was possible. They weren't perfect. Catherine still sometimes slipped into old patterns of judgment. Diana still struggled with jealousy and inadequacy. Garrett still carried the weight of loving a woman he could never have. But they were trying, showing up, doing the work. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, I think Mommy would like what we're doing."
The observation hit Marcus square in the chest. He looked at the photo Diana was showing Lily, Elena at 20, laughing at something off camera, alive and vibrant and full of hope for a future she'd never get to see. "What do you mean, baby?"
"Giving people second chances. Like you gave me when I broke your laptop, and like you gave Grandma Catherine, and like Grandma gave herself." Marcus pulled Lily close, this child who saw the world with Elena's clarity and compassion. "Your mom gave me a second chance once, too. When a rich girl fell in love with a poor guy who had nothing but dreams. And that second chance made me." The simple truth of it, the joy in her voice, made everyone at the table smile. Catherine wiped her eyes. Diana pressed her hand to her heart. Garrett looked away, blinking rapidly. They sat down to eat, this assembled family passing plates and sharing stories. Catherine talked about her regular customers at Starbucks, learning their orders and their lives.
Diana mentioned her new job at a nonprofit, making a third of her old salary and loving the work for the first time in her career. Garrett described a business deal that had fallen through, laughing about it instead of spiraling into the competitive rage he used to carry. Lily listened to them all with the serious attention of a child absorbing lessons about how to be human. Marcus watched his daughter learn that growth was possible, that mistakes didn't have to be permanent, that families could be built as much as born. After lunch, they moved to the backyard. Lily wanted to practice soccer, so Garrett set up cones for drills while Catherine and Diana cheered from lawn chairs. Marcus stood with his coffee, watching his daughter chase a ball across grass that needed mowing, and felt something close to peace. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Richard. I'm in Florida. Got a job doing financial consulting. Nothing fancy. I wanted you to know I'm trying." Marcus stared at the message, debating whether to respond. Richard Whitmore working a job, trying to rebuild from bankruptcy and disgrace. It seemed impossible. But then, 3 months ago, Catherine working at Starbucks had seemed impossible too. He typed back, "Good luck." 2 words, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that effort mattered. Maybe in a year, maybe in 5, maybe never, Richard would earn his way back to some kind of relationship with Lily. Or maybe he wouldn't. That was up to him. The sun angled lower, painting the backyard gold. Catherine called everyone inside for cinnamon rolls, still warm from the oven. They crowded around the kitchen counter, this imperfect family learning how to love each other, how to show up, how to value presence over presence. Marcus looked at the photo of Elena on the refrigerator, at her smile and the light in her eyes. She'd believed in him when he was nobody. She'd chosen love over legacy, character over comfort, truth over tradition. And in doing so, she'd given him not just a daughter, but a blueprint for living, one that measured success by who showed up, by who stayed, by who loved without condition. Lily appeared at his elbow, cinnamon roll in hand. "Daddy, do you miss Mommy?" The question came without warning, as children's questions often did. "Every day, baby. But you know what?" "What?" "She's still here. In you, in the choices we make, in the way we treat people. Your mom taught me that love isn't about money or status or any of the things people think matter. It's about showing up, about trying, about giving people chances to be better." Lily processed this, chewing thoughtfully.
Like second chances?
Exactly like second chances.
I'm glad you give people second chances, Daddy. Even mean people.
Marcus smiled, pulling his daughter close. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They stood together in the kitchen that had seen so many Sunday mornings, so many ordinary moments that added up to a life. Around them, conversation flowed. Catherine asking Diana about her new job. Garrett offering to help with some networking. Everyone finding their place in this chosen family. Outside, the sun set over their modest neighborhood, where lawns were mowed by homeowners and children played without security guards. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just real life, lived deliberately, valued for its authenticity rather than its price tag. Marcus Hayes had $3.8 billion and a G650 in a private hangar. But here, in this kitchen, surrounded by people who'd earned the right to be present, he had something worth infinitely more. He had his daughter's laughter. He had Catherine's transformation. He had Diana's courage and Garrett's loyalty. And the memory of a woman who'd known that love mattered more than legacy. He had everything that counted, and that was enough.